Happy New Year! I am Riley E. Smith, a writer and comedian when I can stand to leave my house. And like many bibliophiles, I have been spending the new year looking back on what I have read in 2025. So I thought that I would share with you the best books that I read in 2025, so maybe you can go pick them up. Maybe do a little cheeky read. We'll see. We'll see what speaks to you. I read a lot of really good books last year. My average rating for books last year was something like 4.5 stars, and I'm not usually that nice, so it was hard competition to get on this top 5. I'm gonna get right into it. We're gonna start with number 5 and work our way up. We're gonna start with number 5, which was Shadow of the Torturer by Wolfe. I have a version here that has both the first and second in the Book of the New Sun series. I recommend this series a lot. It is sci-fi, it is fantasy, and it is somehow a third mysterious thing. It is constantly surprising me, making my jaw drop. One of my biggest pet peeves in sci-fi and fantasy is when the main character doesn't really seem immersed in the world. Like, sometimes I can't stand this. I'm not like other girls vibe that like comes with a protagonist. Like, if you grew up in the world, you would be of that world. You would not sound and act like a millennial from 2026, like a lot of, I think, protagonists tend to do. At least in the sci-fi I'm willing to pick up and try. Because the other pet peeve that I have in sci-fi is the misogyny. This book does have misogyny. If you can't stand reading a book that has misogyny, then maybe this isn't for you. But I think the merits of the book do make it really fascinating. The main character is very firmly of his world. Wolfe is so good at making you feel immersed and ingrained in this world, and yet still not having any fucking clue what's going on. The reason that I like this book so much is that the main character is like a teenage guy who just got his first job and he's already effed it up. He's the hero, I guess, but he just kind of like fucks up things from task to task and fails upward. And it's just very fascinating because he has no clue what's going on, even though he is firmly immersed in the world and seems to be keeping things from you as the reader. He's telling his story, but it's unclear what his agenda is. There's so many layers to this, and it's just good fun and really, really well written. So if sci-fi or fantasy are at all your thing and you can stand a guy protagonist who is not always respectful of the woman characters. The woman characters are still really interesting and I think fascinatingly drawn, even though, yeah, I'm not buying the like total devotion to wanting to show the main character your boobs. But that's why it only ended up at number 5, despite all of its merits. If you're at all into sci-fi or fantasy and you want to read something that's a little bit different while really exemplifying what's great about the genre, The Book of the New Sun by Wolfe, check it out. My pick for number 4 is actually non-fiction. Oh no, The Shiny. Okay, let's see if I can show you this cover and then I will put it down. It's called How to Be a Victorian. As you can see, the version I have still has its protective covering, making it look like I stole from a library. I did not steal it from a library. It was legally purchased. It's called How to Be a Victorian, A Dawn to Dusk Guide to Victorian Life by Ruth Goodman. Goodman did such a spectacular job with this book. I was obsessed. Everybody I knew got to hear about what I read about in this book. Because what's really cool is that Goodman was part of a project where they lived on a farm with Victorian technology, Victorian fashion, and Victorian tasks for like a couple months. So she's lived at least a segment of the life. She's also really good at showing you how different socioeconomic levels of people lived. And for the most part, she focuses on how most people lived, which most people lived with, like, you get half a potato and some tea and that's your whole fucking dinner. Best of luck to your bones and innards. You get no fucking nutrients. Really fascinating look at the period, meticulously researched and very well written. She really does, like, what is it like to wake up in the morning? What's the first thing you do? All the way to, like, sex life of the Victorians, which actually very different than a lot of our modern conceptions of the period. Very cool. In a way, it was disappointing because I realized that a lot of the hang-ups of the Victorians are still very much in effect. But it was interesting to see what was different than I supposed. And also what technologies occurred in the 19th century and how people integrated those into their lives. How huge a deal, like, innovations in laundry were for women in particular, as they always are. If you are at all interested in the Victorian period or in just an understanding history on a person-to-person, like day-by-day basis, pick up How to Be a Victorian by Ruth Goodman. It is so interesting. Book number 3 on our list, Babbitt by Sinclair Lewis. This was a reread for me, although the first time I read it was in middle school. I don't think I finished it then, which makes sense because, you know, it's about a grown man in the 1920s who was a real estate mogul, and not even a mogul. He's just like a real estate agent doing reasonably well. And he tries to climb the social ladder in his Minnesota city and realizes that his life is pretty vapid and empty. What I like about Babbitt is that is the summary of the book, but it is so detailed. It is so specific with, like, speech patterns and where do people go to lunch and what is that place like and what is it actually like to kind of dip your toe into an affair at the time and what are the attendant feelings for that. It's also interesting because it seems like at the front that Sinclair Lewis just, like, hates his main character. Like, he is just ripping into this guy. But over the course of it, you do kind of start to sympathize with Babbitt, which is a surprise to me because hard to sympathize with men who are assholes. But there's something about Babbitt. He's kind of a simple guy who realizes the things around him aren't actually giving him satisfaction. I love Sinclair Lewis's prose. It's always so beautiful. If you hear grumbling in the background, my dog hates when I do anything that's not cuddling him on the couch, so he's going to be protesting this whole video. The language is great. If you're interested in the 1920s, it's kind of a time capsule. I guess, like, regular people, like, not quite as lifestyles the rich and famous as F. Scott Fitzgerald. He's firmly middle class, so it's a very interesting time capsule because Sinclair Lewis really captures the minutiae and details of somebody's day. And despite having kind of a bleak summary, I think that it has a gently optimistic ending that I really liked. So I very much recommend this, especially since we're still in a capitalist consumer hellscape. And if you've been struggling with that lately, perhaps you will relate to Babbitt and get some comfort from his journey. Or you'll be like me in middle school and get annoyed that he's not more bold, because when you're 12, you have no effing patience for dilly-dallying. Coming in at number 2, best book I read in 2025. This is the second place. It's another Sinclair Lewis. I like him a lot. I really like his prose style. It's so beautiful. Even when he's talking about something that's dull, he could be talking about a friggin' puddle outside of a gross butcher shop, which he does talk about in this. It still sounds beautiful, which I love. This book is called Main Street. It was written earlier than Babbitt, so it actually takes place in the 1910s. This is another book that I've read multiple times, and I came back to it now. First time I read it, I was in middle school. That's when I picked these books up. I doubt that I finished it, but I think I definitely finished it at some point later, but that would have been more teenagery, in my dipping my toes into my 20s. Don't know why that's the hand motion. So Main Street is similar to Babbitt. In this particular case, we are lampooning satirizing small town America, particularly a made-up town in Minnesota that is very similar, suspiciously similar to the one that Sinclair Lewis actually grew up in, so he knows what he's talking about. It's about a young idealist who marries a doctor in a small town, and she goes out with all of her big ideas about improving the town, and unsurprisingly enough, the group of American townsfolk do not want to be improved. It's very interesting because I've always really related to her and her drive for the world to be better, for herself to be better, but now that I'm a little older, I'm also recognizing that you have to work with the environment that you have. So again, this is a very interesting one to read at different parts of your life. It's very funny. It's very beautifully written. I really like how Carol is done. That's why this gets to be book number 2. Much less misogyny. It's actually pretty feminist because Sinclair Lewis points out that a big part of the problem is that Carol is so bored. She can't get a job. The things that she can get involved with are not interesting to her. She's expected to sit in her house. She has a servant, so that person does most of the housework, so she doesn't have a whole lot to do in her house. It's just about a young person looking for the meaning of their life in the context of America, white America in particular. I think a lot of us can relate. I love this book. I read it again and again, and I highly recommend if you are also someone who has looked at America's capitalist hellscape and wondered what your place in it was. That's Main Street by Sinclair Lewis. And now for the big one, the number 1 best book by far that I read in 2025. It's a banger. It's a classic. It's Fyodor Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. I love this edition that I have. It's really old. I have to be very careful with it because I almost pulled the cover off this morning. And it's such a cool paperback printing that I do not want to ruin it. But here it is, Crime and Punishment. I knew going into this book that I was in for a literary classic. I also did not know that I was in for the best drama of the year. Like, the best drama on TV in 18 whatever. Like, the chapter endings had me gasping. I was covering up pages so I wouldn't cheat and like skip to the end of scenes to see what happens next. It was really gripping. It harkens back to a time when bestsellers were also well written. And there wasn't such a big divide between what was literary fiction, which could deal with these big themes of death and murder and redemption and economic instability and inequality. These huge themes of life are in this book. It's also riveting drama. Dostoevsky does such a good job of bringing us into the mind of the characters, which is what I love. That's why I read. But it also has a pretty thrilling, engaging plot. You especially feel for the main character and feel with him, which is kind of wild and really shows how Dostoevsky, for all his bleak cynicism, really does help you sympathize with all of his characters. It's a classic for a reason. It's also very gripping and interesting if you're more of a plot person. If you like thrillers, you will probably like this. So if you're into lit fic, if you're into thrillers, pick it up. Pick it up. Crime and Punishment. I hope one day to be able to read it in the original. Currently working on learning Russian. We'll see how that goes. Maybe I'll start with something much, much easier for my first Russian book. Probably try some short stories soon in the original and see if I can manage that. That brings us to the end of our journey of the top 5 books that I read in 2025. Please let me know if any of these sound interesting to you, if you've read them, what your opinions on them are, what you thought was the best book you read in 2025. As you can see, if you were looking for new books, you came to the wrong place. But I promise these were all very good and you will enjoy them. If you are looking for something a little newer, I am also an author. Right now I have a lot of books on Amazon, particularly romantic comedies of the short and sweet type. A lot of sapphic romantic comedies, if you want to check that out. But my best-selling novel, and the one I'm most proud of, is Cardinal, which is a superhero action book based in the dystopian style prison city of the Citadel. If you like madcap, fast-talking adventures with lots of action scenes and characters you will love to root for, even though they don't always make good choices, then you gotta check out Cardinal. So I will put the link in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel. We do a lot of critique content. I share books that I like. I also have some videos coming up about Bugs Bunny. I have a lot of Bugs Bunny knowledge that I would like to share with the world, so that video is coming up. If that sounds interesting to you, make sure you subscribe. A lot of big plans for the channel this year, so like this video, subscribe, turn notifications on if you're feeling saucy. We will see you for the next one. Thank you so much for watching, and having a lovely rest of your day.